Hello and welcome. We're redoing our little pumpkin today. This is part of the series of sideways videos that I originally made. We are just going through them again. So here is a little pumpkin. The things you'll need to make this guy will be some worsted weight yarn and a color for the stem, a color for the leaf, and a color for the body of your pumpkin. You want a 4mm crochet hook, some scissors, yarn needles, polyfill stuffing, just looks like this, dried catnip if you'd like, you don't need to use it. And then if you want to follow along with a written pattern, I do have a collection of cat toy patterns available on Amazon and Kindle. You can find a link in my bio if you're interested in following along. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started with this little guy. Starting with the stem of our pumpkin, we're going to make a little magic circle. So we're crossing our long end over the short end of our yarn, going through the front toward the back. We're going to wrap the yarn, pull up a loop. I'm going to do that one more time. So we got two little loops there. And then working down, whichever side has your two pieces of yarn, we're going to make 6 single crochets into our magic circle. So we're going in, wrap our yarn, pull it up, wrap, pull through 2. Sorry to hit you with the black yarn here, but don't worry, it's only for 3 rounds, and then we're going to be switching colors, so it'll be a little easier to see. And once we finish these 6 single crochets, we are going to take our short tail, we're going to pull it, it's going to close up our circle, then we're going to join the beginning and the end. So we're taking our hook through the very first stitch we made, wrapping the yarn, we're pulling it through there and then through the loop that we had left on our hook. We're going to chain 1 and then we're going to flip this little guy over, take our tail here, we're going to thread it onto a yarn needle, and once we've got that on there, we're not going to tie it off or anything, we're just leaving it loose. We're going to grab any little leg, we're trying just to get one little strand here and pull that through till you get a little loop. We're going to go through the loop with our yarn needle and just tie that off. That's going to keep our tail from coming undone and letting any of the polyfill or anything else out of our cat toy. So we've joined, we've made our little chain here. We're going to go through the back loop only for our 6 single crochet. So if you're looking at the top here, you get that little V shape at the top. We want to grab only the back loop. So you're doing that all the way around, just the back loop. And once we get back to the beginning, it'll look a little funny at first, but then once we slip stitch to join it, you will see it all come together and start to look a little bit like a pumpkin stem or like a teeny tiny little cup, depending on how you look at it. All right, so we're all the way back around. We're finding that very first stitch you made. We're going to drive our hook into there, making sure you're getting the top and the bottom, because this time we will be going through both loops. So we're slip stitching, and then you can see it's got that little shape now. And we're going to chain 1, and we're going to do a plain single crochet round through both loops, nothing fancy. Before you get to the end, or when you get to the end, we're not going to slip stitch yet because we are going to change color when we get there. So keep going. Once you get there, stop, and then we'll tie on our next color. So I'll go ahead and meet you for round 4. Okay, for round 4, we don't need this black color anymore. We're going to leave enough though we have a tail to tie the orange onto, but we're just going to cut it off. And taking whatever color your pumpkin's going to be, maybe it's orange, maybe it's not, totally up to you guys. We're going to tie it to that black tail, bringing the knot down as close to our hook as we can, so our hook stays in there as we make these knots, just so that we don't over tighten or lose our stitch that we ended with. Just double knotting it, trying to leave the knots kind of facing in toward the inside of the toy. Now with the working and the long end of that orange yarn, we're going to bring it all the way to the front so the knots and all of the tails stay behind in the back. We will now slip stitch to join into that very first stitch of our round. Now we're going to chain 1, and we'll be working our way around here. Doing an increase stitch, we're going to increase in every stitch around, so we're going to work 2 single crochet into that first stitch. So we're going in, wrap that orange, pull it up, wrap, pull through both loops, and you go right back into that same spot. I'm going to do this for each stitch all the way around. That's going to take us from 6 stitches up to 12. When you get to the end, we'll slip stitch to join, we'll chain 1, and we'll meet back for the next increase round. Round 5, we are doing another repeating pattern. On our increase, we're going to go ahead and for the very first one, we're going to single crochet, just a plain single crochet, and then we're doing the 2 single crochets into the next stitch. This is going to take us from 12 stitches up to 18, so we're going to go again a single and then 2 into the next stitch. So keep going all the way to the end. When you get to the end, we'll slip stitch to join, we'll chain 1, and then we'll be ready for our next and last increase of this little pumpkin guy here. So I'll meet you there. Round 6, our final increase round here, we're going to have a single crochet in the first 2 stitches. So just plain single crochet and 1 and plain single crochet and 2, and then we are going to increase in that 3rd stitch. And again, that is a repeating pattern, so we're going 1, 1, and then 2 all the way around. That will take us from 18 stitches up to 24 stitches. We'll slip stitch to join, we'll chain 1, and then I will talk to you about rounds 7 through 10. Okay, rounds 7, 8, 9, and 10 are all plain single crochet rounds, so you're just giving a single stitch to each stitch around. At the end of all of those rounds, you'll have 24 stitches. Here is my secret here with my pumpkin. If you wanted to make this a holiday, other than Halloween or Thanksgiving or whatever other festive pumpkin related holidays there are, if you wanted this to be like a Christmas bauble that you could hang on your tree and drive your cat crazy or just give to your cat, you could, for rounds 8 and 9, switch colors. So if you, instead of having an orange pumpkin, you were creating, let's say, red, green, blue, whatever Christmas colors you like, you could switch colors for rounds 8 and 9 to make a little stripe across the middle in a complementary holiday color, and leave off the leaf, and you would just have a little Christmas bauble. So you could use this exact same pattern to make a totally different cute little toy if you wanted to. You don't have to. Just letting you know. So when Christmas rolls around, or whatever holiday you want to have a little ornament for, you could totally switch up the colors and use the same pattern for that. So we're going to keep going. We're going to finish round 7 through 9 just plain single crochets. We're slip stitching to join. We're going to chain 1, and then when we finish, we've got a couple of decrease rounds before we add stuffing and finish her off, and then we got just our leaf to go. So we're getting there. Keep going, and I will see you at the end of these plain rounds. Our plain rounds are done. We're working our way to round 11 here. We've got a little decrease coming up. We're going to go 2 single crochets, 1 and 1, 1 and that second stitch, and then those next 2, stitch 3 and 4, they're going to get worked together. So we're going to grab the front loops only of those next 2 stitches, wrap, pull through both of those, wrap, pull through the 2 loops on our hook. So again, it is a repeating pattern. We're going 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet in the next stitch, and then those next 2 stitches get worked together. And if you have a decrease that you like better than the one I'm doing here, it's absolutely okay to do whatever decrease stitch you like. The goal is just to get from 24 stitches down to 18 stitches, and we want to try to keep them as tight as we can so that way no stuffing or catnip falls out of the toy. When we get to the end, we'll slip stitch to join, we'll chain 1, and then we will be ready for our next decrease round. We are almost at the end of the body of our pumpkin here. So keep going, and we'll meet back for round 12. Round 12 is another decrease round. If you've still got tails hanging out, you should be able to tuck them in at this point. They're just going to stay in there floating around. We don't have to weave them in. They'll end up just hidden away. So we're going to have 1 single crochet in the very first stitch, and then we will be working the next 2 together. So again, it's just a repeating pattern. We're doing 1 single crochet, followed by the decrease stitch working the next two together. When we get to the end of this one, we're going to slip stitch to join, we'll chain one, and then this is going to be the point where we want to add our stuffing. If we wait until the very last round, we won't have enough room to get our little fingies in there to put the stuffing in. So keep going. When you get to the end, stop. We'll add catnip first if you're adding catnip, then we'll put our stuffing in, and then we'll keep going, finishing off our very last round of the body of the pumpkin. All right, stuffing's done. Our last decrease round before we're closing up the body of our pumpkin here. So we are just making sure that we've joined, we've chained one, and then all the way around we're going to be working decrease stitches. So we're grabbing the front loop only of those first two stitches, and we're going to work them together, and we're going to just do that all the way around. So every stitch you're making is a decrease stitch. That will take you from 12 stitches down to 6. We'll slip stitch to join. This time we won't chain one. When we get there, we're going to cut ourselves a little bit of a tail. We're going to use that tail to weave the bottom bit here closed. So we got just a couple more decreases before we get to the end. After this, all we have to worry about is that leaf and attaching our little leaf, which won't take long at all. All right, so we're going into the very first stitch, slip stitch to join those. We're going to leave kind of a medium length tail, just taking our scissors, cutting that off. And then before we thread that on, we're going to wrap our yarn around our hook and pull it through that last loop. That'll tie it off. Now we've got our yarn needle ready. We're just threading that on. We're not going to tie it on. We're going to leave it nice and loose, and then working our way into the very first stitch and out the stitch right next door to it, pulling that tail through there, and we're going to do that 2 more times. This will take us all the way back to the beginning, and then we're just going to pull on that tail to close up the bottom of our pumpkin. And once you have that as tight as you can, we're going to grab onto the little piece of yarn that was our join. And we're going to pull until we got just a loop there to bring our needle through, and we are knotting that off. So you're just pulling that as tight as you can. Whichever way that knot lays the flattest, you're going to take your yarn needle, send it through the toy. We'll pull a little bit of tension on there, so when we snip that nice and close to the toy without cutting any of those stitches, the rest of the tail will just disappear inside and kind of stay floating around in there. So we've got our nice little round pumpkin body. Next, we're going to grab our leaf color and make our leaf. Okay, we're starting our leaf. We're going to take our green yarn. We're going to make a slip knot. So we're going to cross the working yarn over the short end, and then from the back, we're going to pull up that long end of the yarn into a little loop and just kind of give a little tug there to close it off. So there's our slip knot. We'll take our hook. We're going to put it through the slip knot, and then you can kind of pull both ends to shrink that knot down to the size of your hook. And we will be chaining for 6. So we're going to wrap around the hook, pull up, and we're going to do that 6 times in total. There's our chain of 6 with our slip knot. We are going to slip stitch into the second chain from our hook. So we're looking at it here, not that very first one, but that next one there. We're just going to dive in, wrap the yarn, we're going to pull through that one, and then we're going to pull through the loop we started on our hook there. And we're going to single crochet into the next loop. So we're going in, wrap, pull up, wrap, pull through 2. We are going to half double crochet into the next chain. So we're going to wrap our yarn around the hook before we go, then into our chain, wrap, pull up, and then we're going to wrap to pull through all 3 on the hook there, all 3 loops. Next one is going to be a double crochet. So we're wrapping our yarn before we go in. Then we're going into the chain. We'll wrap again, pull up. We're going to wrap, pull through the first 2 loops on our hook, wrap, pull through those last 2. And then for that last little space we've got here, we're going to double crochet 3 into that spot. So we're doing that same stitch that we just finished, but again and again and again. So we got one there, we're gonna go into that same space again. So we're wrapping before we go in, wrap, pull up, wrap, pull through the first two, wrap, pull through those remaining two, and we're doing it one more time into that same spot. That is the first side of our leaf done. We're going to then slip stitch into that same space we were just working our double crochets. So we're just kind of rounding off. You can see that looks like 1/2 of a leaf. We're working down the other side of our leaf in reverse order to make the second side. So we're gonna do 3 double crochet. We're wrapping that yarn over, going into that same spot still. We wrap, we pull through the first 2 on our hook. We wrap, we pull through the second 2, and we do 2 more of those still in that same spot one more time. And now we are going to continue working our way down all the back sides of those chains. So we've got 1 double crochet in the next, then we've got our 1/2 double crochet in the one next door, and then we're going to single crochet in the next one, and in that very last one there we will slip stitch to join, or not to join, just slip stitch. And then we are going to cut a nice long tail, and we'll wrap our yarn over, pull, and then we're going to use both of these tails to tie our leaf onto our pumpkin. Okay, we're going to thread either one of your tails on to start. Don't mind my hands, I took a break to spray paint a bucket of hay for a little scarecrow costume. Anyway, so if you have that little line there from your joins, we're going to try to keep it in the back, and then either side, if you grab the top tail, you want to try to line it up with the top of the toy. If you're the bottom, you kind of do the same thing, but then start sewing onto the bottom. So we're going through there, and then I'm just gonna loop back through the leaf. I'm gonna do that a couple more times. So we're going in through the toy, out at a point where the leaf will still cover, and then back in, and then over to the other side, and we're gonna secure just at least one more of the stitches from the leaf over. And then underneath our leaf, we'll go through, grab a little thread of a stitch from the pumpkin, just again anywhere underneath the leaf so that it is invisible from the other side. We'll tie that off. We'll send that little bit of tail through, snip off the extra, and that'll stay on the inside there. And then we're going to do the same thing with the bottom. We're going to thread it onto our yarn needle. And once that's on there, we're just going to go into the toy again and grab a stitch of our bottom there, and then just kind of shooting across from side to side to secure it down. And once you have what feels like enough stitches to you in there, where it might come up a little but it's not going to come off, you can grab a single piece of the green yarn and give it a little knot there. Try to pull it nice and tight and keep it flat to that leaf so it's camouflaged. And just like before, we'll send the remaining bits of that tail through the toy, put a little tension, snip that off, and then there is our little pumpkin.